I went hiking alone last September. It wasn't anything extreme, just a weekend trip to the Blue Ridge Mountains. I needed to clear my head after a breakup, and I'd always found peace in the woods. The plan was simple. Hike up to a primitive campsite about 6 miles in, spend the night, hike back down the next day. I told my roommate where I was going, packed my gear, and left early Saturday morning. The weather was perfect. Crisp air, golden sunlight through the trees, the smell of pine and damp earth. The trail wasn't crowded, which I liked. I passed 2 couples on the way up and exchanged polite nods. Around mile 5, I stopped to rest and eat a granola bar. That's when I saw him, a man, maybe late 30s, wearing a faded red hoodie and old jeans. No pack, no water bottle, no gear at all. Just standing where the trail curved. I remember how still he was. I waved, said something like, "Hey, beautiful day for it, huh?" He didn't respond. Just looked at me with this blank, slightly puzzled expression, like he wasn't expecting anyone else to be there. I got up and started walking again, brushing it off. Maybe he was local. Maybe he'd wandered up from a nearby cabin. But something about him stuck with me, the way he just stood there, watching. I didn't see him again on the trail. I reached my campsite around 4 p.m., set up my tent, and gathered some wood for a fire. As the sun dipped below the ridge, the woods turned shadowy and still. That's when the unease really started to set in. I kept thinking about that man. What was he doing out there without any gear? Why didn't he speak? And why did he look at me like that? I tried to shake it. I made dinner, sat by the fire, wrote in my journal. But the feeling didn't leave. Around 10 p.m., I climbed into my tent and zipped it up. The woods were quiet, save for the usual chirping insects and occasional rustle in the underbrush. I drifted off eventually, the way you do when you're tired from a full day of hiking. Sometime deep in the night, I woke up to a noise. Not an animal noise. Something deliberate. Footsteps. Slow, crunching footsteps moving through the leaves. I lay there, frozen. They were close. Maybe 20, 30 feet away. I reached for my flashlight and held my breath. The steps stopped. I waited. Then I heard breathing. Not heavy or ragged. Just slow and steady. Like someone standing still and waiting. Right outside the range of the tent, I didn't move, I didn't make a sound. I just waited, clutching my flashlight, heart pounding in my ears. Then, nothing. Silence. I stayed awake for what felt like hours, staring at the thin fabric between me and whoever, or whatever, had been out there. Eventually, the first hint of morning light crept through the mesh of the tent. I unzipped it slowly and stepped outside. No one. Nothing. Just the woods. Quiet again. But I found something. About 10 feet from my tent, near the edge of the tree line, the ground had been disturbed. A spot where the leaves were brushed aside. And in the middle of that bare patch of dirt was a single torn piece of red fabric. It looked like it had come from a hoodie. I didn't eat. I didn't pack properly. I just grabbed my essentials, broke camp in record time, and started hiking. Down. I kept expecting to see him again, around a bend at the next trail marker, standing silently the way he had before. But I didn't. I didn't see anyone. When I got back to the trailhead, mine was the only car in the parking lot. And the strangest part? When I checked with the local ranger station later that day, just to be sure, I asked if anyone else had signed in to hike that trail over the weekend. They said no. Not a soul had registered for that path in 3 days. I don't know who that man was. I don't know what he wanted. But I don't hike alone anymore, and I've never worn red again. I used to live in a duplex just outside of Asheville, the kind with 1 unit downstairs and another directly above it. I rented the bottom floor. It was cheap, old, a little drafty, but cozy. I liked it. Quiet neighborhood, lots of trees, 10 minutes from work. The upstairs unit stayed empty for months after I moved in. The landlord said he was renovating it, but I never saw any work being done. No contractors, no hammering, no sawdust on the steps. Just nothing. I didn't care. Though, an empty upstairs meant no noise, no footsteps above my head. It was peaceful. Until one weekend in December, that changed. It started small. I was reading on the couch one night when I heard something. Faint, but clear. Footsteps. Right above me. Slow, steady. Back and forth across the ceiling. I sat up, confused. The unit upstairs was still supposed to be empty. I hadn't seen a moving truck, no new car in the driveway. But there they were. Footsteps. Light ones, like someone walking. Barefoot on old wood. I texted my landlord. He didn't answer. The next morning, I called him. He sounded half awake, said nobody had moved in yet. I asked if maybe a worker had access. He said no one should be up there, but he'd check it out. That night, it was worse. I heard the footsteps again, heavier this time. I stood under the ceiling in the kitchen, listening. It sounded like someone dragging furniture, slowly, like they were rearranging a room. But there hadn't been any thumping from above all day. How did furniture even get in there? I turned off all my lights and crept out the back door. The stairs that led up to the other unit creaked under my feet. I stood outside the front door of the upstairs apartment, straining to hear. Nothing. Dead silent. I knocked. No answer. I jiggled the knob. Locked. I leaned in, listening close. Still nothing. The silence was worse than the footsteps. I backed away and went home, heart pounding, feeling stupid. Maybe I imagined it. But at 2:41 a.m., I'll never forget that time, I woke up to a crash. Something slammed into the floor above me so hard that dust dropped from my ceiling. I jumped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and ran outside again. This time, the upstairs light was on. Just the hallway light, casting a dull yellow glow behind the blinds. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't go up there. The next morning, I called the landlord again. Told him I wasn't imagining things. He said he'd come by later and bring the key. He showed up around 5 p.m. Older guy, mid-60s, wore coveralls and a tired expression. I followed him up the stairs. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. The place was completely empty. No furniture, no lights on, no footprints in the dust on the hardwood floor. We walked through the whole unit together. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, closets, nothing. The air was stale and cold, like it hadn't been opened in weeks. He gave me this weird look, like he thought I was messing with him. Said maybe I was dreaming it, or maybe sound carried weird through the walls. But that night, I heard the footsteps again, slower now, more deliberate. And this time, they stopped right above my bedroom. I couldn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, barely breathing, trying to decide what the hell to do. Around 3 a.m. I heard something different. Not footsteps. A creaking sound, like a door opening. And then, breathing. Not mine. Not from outside. It was coming from directly above me. A long, slow inhale. And a shaky exhale. Then again. Over and over. Like someone lying on the floor upstairs, directly above my bed, listening to me the way I was listening. To them. I moved out 2 days later. Packed everything in one night, didn't sleep, didn't even finish cleaning. I told the landlord I got a job in Charlotte. He didn't ask questions. The worst part? As I was carrying the last box out to my car, I saw the blinds upstairs shift. Just for a second. Like someone watching me leave. And the upstairs light? It was on again, even though no one had a key but me and the landlord. I never found out what was going on up there. The place got rented out a few weeks later. I drove by once, just to see. A young couple had moved in. I thought about stopping, warning them. But what would I even say? Don't listen too hard at night. Don't look up when you're lying in bed. I haven't been back since, and I still sleep with earplugs in. Not to block out noise, to block out what might still be listening. It was late October when I took a solo drive through West Virginia. I'd been traveling the East Coast, working remotely, sleeping in my car, or the occasional roadside motel. The leaves were changing and the highways were mostly empty. It felt peaceful. I liked the silence. One night, after a long drive, I pulled into a tiny gas station in the middle of nowhere. You know the type. One pump, flickering overhead light, a closed mini-mart with bars on the windows. It was past midnight, and I was exhausted. I filled up the tank and planned to drive another 30 minutes before finding a place to sleep. As I stood there, stretching my legs, I noticed someone walking toward me from the tree line. At first, I thought it was a shadow or maybe an animal, but no, it was a man. Tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket and a large backpack. He had a beanie pulled low and walked with purpose, head slightly tilted down. He stopped about 15 feet from me, just beyond the glow of the gas station lights. Close, enough that I could see the outline of his face, but not his eyes. "You headed north?" he asked. His voice was calm, steady. I hesitated. "Yeah," I said, pointing vaguely toward the highway. "Just passing through." He nodded. "You mind giving me a lift? Just a few exits. My buddy was supposed to meet me here, but something came up. There was no one else around. No cars, no station attendant, no lights beyond the station." My gut screamed no, but I didn't want to seem paranoid or rude. I told him I could drop him off at the next truck stop. He nodded again and walked to the passenger side door without another word. I unlocked it. I still don't know why. He climbed in and set his backpack at his feet. I got in, started the engine, and pulled back onto the road. We rode in silence for a while. He didn't fidget, didn't look out the window, just sat completely still, staring straight ahead. "Where you coming from?" I asked, trying to break the tension. He didn't answer for a few seconds. "Been walking," he said. "Off and on." "Through the woods?" He smiled slightly. "Mostly." There was something off about him. He didn't smell like sweat or dirt. He smelled like nothing at all, and he wasn't out of breath, despite having walked miles in the cold night air. His hands were clean. His boots looked almost new. I kept glancing at him, hoping I wasn't making it obvious. Then I noticed his backpack was slightly open, just enough for me to see inside. There was no camping gear, no sleeping bag, no clothes, just a large, sharp hunting knife, sitting right on top, like it was the only thing in there. My mouth went dry. I kept my eyes on the road, heart thudding in my chest. I thought about pulling over, making up an excuse, saying I had to pee, or that I'd changed my mind. But I was in the middle of nowhere. No lights ahead, no turnoffs, just black road and thicker black woods. Then he spoke again. "You ever see something in the woods?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head slightly toward me. "Like someone watching you. Not moving, just watching." I didn't respond. He leaned back in his seat and sighed. "I used to see them. All the time. Out on the trails. Hikers, campers. Thought they were real, you know? But they never talked, never blinked." I gripped the wheel tighter. He chuckled. "Eventually, I realized they weren't really there. Or maybe I wasn't supposed to see them." I didn't know what to say. Every instinct in my body told me to get away from this man. "Can you pull over here?" he said suddenly, pointing toward a narrow gravel road that disappeared into the trees. "There's nothing down there," I said. "I know," he said. "It's where I'm going." I slowed the car, partly out of panic, partly because I didn't want to make him angry. I stopped at the edge of the turnoff. He reached down, grabbed his backpack, and opened the door. But before he got out, he leaned in close to me. "You'll see them too," he said quietly. "Once you've been out here, long enough." Then he stepped out and disappeared into the dark. I waited until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. Then I drove. Faster than I've ever driven in my life. I didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour diner 2 towns over. I parked under the lights, locked the doors, and sat there for an hour, trying to calm down. In the weeks that followed, I kept driving. I tried to forget. I told myself he was just a drifter, harmless, maybe a little unwell. But sometimes, when I pull over on empty highways late at night, I think I see someone standing at the edge of the trees, not moving, just watching. And every time I wonder if I've finally been out here long enough.